Most of us think we know the story of Adam and Eve, right? It's a tale of a perfect garden, a forbidden fruit, and a huge punishment. But what if the consequences of their choice weren't just about punishment? What if they were actually part of a much bigger, more purposeful plan? Let's dive into a really fascinating reinterpretation of one of history's most foundational stories.
Okay, so let's set the scene. You have Adam and Eve in the paradise of Eden. They have just broken the one and only rule they were given. By eating from the tree of knowledge, they've completely upended their world. And now, everything is about to change.
Now, this is where our source material flips the script. It argues that what comes next, what we've always called the curses, aren't just angry punishments from God. Nope. Instead, they are carefully designed consequences, formative experiences that were absolutely necessary for the journey into mortality that they had just chosen for themselves.
So let's start with Eve. The judgment placed on her is often seen as one of the harshest parts of the story. But this interpretation asks us to look at it through a totally different lens.
Wow. I mean, those are some powerful and honestly pretty painful sounding words. On the surface, it seems like a clear-cut curse. Childbirth is going to hurt. A lot. But the source suggests there's a much deeper psychological purpose at play here.
Right, so here's the crucial difference. Punishment versus consequence. A punishment can make you feel like a victim, like something unfair is being done to you. But a consequence is just the natural result of an action. The source argues that God didn't want Eve, in her moments of pain, to blame him. He wanted her to remember that the trials of mortal life were a direct result of her own choice. It's all about agency.
Let's move on to the second part of Eve's judgment. And this is maybe one of the most debated and misunderstood phrases in the entire text. It deals directly with the relationship between a husband and a wife.
He shall rule over thee. For centuries, that line has been used as proof of female inferiority, but the source material just completely rejects that interpretation. It reframes this not as a statement about status, but as one about structure.
So the source redefines this as a patriarchal order. And it's not what it sounds like. It's not a badge of superiority for men. It's an administrative procedure. Think of it like an org chart for the family, set up for the sake of order.
And this phrase just perfectly captures the whole idea. The husband's role is to be first among equals. He isn't better. He isn't more important. He's just given a presiding role to help create unity and balance. It's an organizational job, not a declaration of dominance.
So let's break that down. The whole purpose is just to create order in the family. The goal is to keep things balanced. According to the source, because motherhood gives women such a huge, profound influence on future generations, this structure was put in place to ensure a proper balance of power. The whole principle wasn't to make Eve inferior, but to keep them as equal partners on their new journey.
Okay, so what about Adam? His curse has to do with the very ground he stands on, but just like with Eve, the source argues that we shouldn't see this as an affliction at all. We should see it as a foundational blessing, a blessing in disguise.
Did you catch that? Not because of you, but for thy sake. That one little phrase changes absolutely everything. It tells us that this new difficulty has a purpose, a benefit that's specifically for Adam and all of us who came after. The whole point is the challenge. The source actually calls this the gospel of work. It's this core idea that physical labor is sacred. It's the belief that real value, real growth, comes from the process of struggling and toiling to create something worthwhile. And that journey is the path to building character. By having to work against a rebellious earth, we learn patience, we build resilience, and we gain this deep appreciation for things that we've earned through our own labor. It's through that sweat and struggle that our moral and spiritual fiber gets built.
And all of this brings us to the final consequence: getting kicked out. Adam and Eve are sent away from their perfect garden home. And this isn't just them moving to a new neighborhood, it is a fundamental shift in their entire existence.
I mean, just think about it for a second. In Eden, life was effortless. Food was literally just hanging there on the trees and vines. No need to plant, no need to work, no worrying about where your next meal was coming from. It was a world of total comfort and security. But outside Eden, reality hits, and it hits hard. They're now facing a world that is dreary, cold, and hostile. Survival is no longer a given. They have to rely on grains and vegetables, foods that you have to work for, that you have to cultivate with constant effort.
And then, in one final, stark lesson, they're given clothes made from animal skins. Now this means they almost certainly witnessed death for the very first time.
Their new comfort, their new clothes, came at the cost of life. A really powerful introduction to the mortal world that was now their reality.
So when you look at it this way, every single curse becomes a formative experience, a necessary trial that has a purpose for growth. It presents a world where challenges aren't just obstacles, they're tools for building character and wisdom. And it leaves us with a really powerful question. If we look at the trials in this foundational story as opportunities for growth, how might that change the way we view the challenges we face in our own lives?